There's a question older than religion, older than scripture, older than the universe itself, a question whispered in forbidden temples, feared by ancient mystics, erased by every major church that ever existed. What if not every soul was allowed to exist? What if God created more souls than the world could contain, and some of them were refused? Not damned, not punished, not fallen, simply denied reality. Souls designed to live, to breathe, to see, to think, but who were stopped before entering existence. And the darkest secret of all? Those souls didn't disappear. They didn't fade. They didn't die. They remained, trapped in the place between creation and nothingness, watching us, envying us, hating us, desperate for a life they were never allowed to have. Tonight, we open the door the church spent 2,000 years trying to seal. Welcome to the dark side of religion. Asterisk, there are truths humanity was never meant to remember, truths that were not lost, but erased. And tonight, I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that the God you know, the God you were taught to trust, the God at the center of your prayers, your rituals, your fears, and your hopes, wasn't the first. Imagine that before the creation stories you learned in Sunday school, before the angels you picture glowing in white robes, before heaven, hell, Eden, or even the concept of a soul, there were other beings, older than time, older than light, older than the idea of beginning itself, beings humanity worshipped, feared, loved, and obeyed, beings that shaped morality long before morality had a name, beings that had temples, rituals, sacrifices, and devotees by the millions, beings that ruled civilizations so ancient we don't even have names for them. And then, one day they vanished. Not naturally, not gradually, not like fading myths. No. These beings were erased with precision, wiped from memory, their symbols destroyed, their languages unmade, their worship outlawed, their statues smashed, their names silenced. Someone wanted them gone. Someone with power, someone with influence, someone who needed humanity to forget. But the universe has a strange habit. Nothing stays buried forever. Fragments survive. Whispers survive. Symbols return. Stories slip through cracks. And across thousands of years, patterns begin to reappear. Tonight we are going to follow those patterns. We are going to step into the dark spaces of human history, the spaces the church never wanted you to see. We're going to examine gods who existed before God, angels who had memories before heaven, demons who were never demons, and a being so ancient, so feared, that even the earliest Christians tried to destroy every trace of him. And by the time we reach the end, one question will haunt you. If the gods before God were real, why did someone fear them enough to erase them? This journey begins in the desert. Not the desert you know from the Bible, not Jerusalem, not Sinai, not Judea. Older, much older, the kind of desert where time moves differently, where the wind carries stories older than human language, where the stars overhead are so ancient they've witnessed worlds rise and worlds collapse. In the late 1800s, an archaeological team traveling through southeastern Turkey found something unusual. It wasn't a tablet. It wasn't a scroll. It wasn't pottery or tools. It was a stone, carved with symbols no one recognized, symbols that didn't match Sumerian, Akkadian, Hittite, Babylonian, Egyptian, or any other known writing system. But what frightened the archaeologists wasn't the symbols. It was the fact that someone had tried to destroy them. The markings weren't weathered. They were chiseled out, violently, deliberately, as if someone feared the knowledge they held. Even stranger, beneath the destroyed inscription, one phrase remained barely intact. One single line no amount of chiseling could completely erase. Translated loosely, it read, "He was king before kings existed." At first, no one knew what to make of it. A myth? A ceremonial phrase? A mistranslation? But over the next 50 years, the same line began appearing in unrelated sites: southern Mesopotamia, northern Syria, the Levant, the Mediterranean, even fragments found later in North Africa. Different civilizations, different languages, different eras. That same line, that same erasure, same terror, one entity, appearing everywhere, and then erased everywhere. Historians eventually gave him a name, not his real name, but a placeholder, the pre-existent one, not a god of war, not a god of harvest, not a god of wind or sea or sun. Something else, something older, something the earliest humans worshipped long before temples existed. Something so fundamental to existence that later religions had to either absorb him or destroy him. When Christianity emerged, this entity was already ancient beyond comprehension, and yet, traces of him can still be found hidden beneath the text of the Old Testament, encrypted behind revisions, disguised beneath metaphors, buried under linguistic manipulation. There's a reason scholars find the early Old Testament messy, because it was edited. And when a story is edited, you must ask, what was removed, and why? Centuries later, when the early church consolidated power, this entity became the greatest threat to monotheism, not because he opposed God, but because he existed before God's narrative took shape. The church could not allow a deity older than their God, more universal, more ancient, more deeply rooted in humanity's subconscious. So they took the same approach every civilization before them did. Erase him, rewrite him, demonize him, replace him, asterisk. But something unexpected happened. The more they tried to bury him, the more traces slipped through. In apocryphal texts banned by early bishops, in mystical writings smuggled out of Alexandria, in cryptic symbols carved into underground Christian catacombs, and most disturbingly, in angelic descriptions that predate the creation narrative. You see, angels were not originally described as servants of the biblical God. Some were believed to have existed before the formation of heaven, before the throne, before the hierarchy. And some of these angels remembered serving other beings, older beings, primordial beings, beings who shaped the cosmos before it had structure. A forbidden Christian text, the Book of the Veiled Heavens, suggests that the first great war in heaven was not between God and Lucifer, but between angels loyal to the old gods and angels loyal to the new order. Imagine that. Imagine the celestial conflict you've heard your entire life being something completely different. Not about pride, not about rebellion, but about loyalty. Loyalty to deities erased from time. Loyalty to a king before kings. Loyalty to a presence so ancient, so woven into the early fabric of reality, that even angels feared betraying him. But the church could not allow this story to survive. If Christians believed angels had loyalties older than God, the entire foundation of monotheism would collapse instantly. So they hid it, burned it, banned it, asterisk. But the truth survived in pieces, always in pieces, just like the creature I'm about to tell you about. A being early Christians called a demon, but who was never a demon. He was a god, a forgotten god, a punished god, but we'll return to him later. For now, let me take you to the moment that changed everything, the moment that reveals the kind of being powerful enough to make gods tremble. A story that appears, in almost identical form, across 4 ancient civilizations that had no contact with each other. The story of the day when all gods united to kill one of their own. But before we step into that moment, ask yourself honestly, if the gods themselves had to kill another god, what kind of being could he have been? And what would happen if he ever woke up again? Asterisk. And so the story continues in that silence between breath and understanding, the place where ancient truths wait for a listener brave enough to confront them. When the 4 civilizations recorded the same event, an event so impossible so cosmic, so frightening. We must ask, why would cultures separated by oceans, mountains, deserts, and millennia all remember the same night? A night when the sky turned black, a night when the stars flickered like dying embers, a night when the gods themselves gathered together in fear, not anger, not vengeance. Fear. The earliest version comes from a broken clay tablet found near the ruins of Ugarit. Its edges crumble at the slightest touch, but its message has survived 4,000 years of human forgetting. It reads, "We bound him with the chains of beginnings. We sealed him beneath the memory of creation. We swore never to speak his name again." Asterisk. Who is he? Why did gods, immortal beings of power and dominion, need to bind anything? The tablet never explains. It only ends with a single chilling line. If he rises, the world remembers what it should never remember. A similar sentence appears in an ancient Egyptian funerary manuscript, not in hieroglyphs, but in a mysterious protoscript they only used for things too dangerous to write openly. The translation? Before the first dawn, there was another. His breath unmade the sky. His shadow swallowed the sun. Asterisk. Now, pause for a moment. Let your mind consider what that means, not symbolically, but literally. A being whose breath unmade the sky. Not his words, not his anger, just his breath. A being whose shadow swallowed the sun. Not darkness, his shadow. Asterisk. The Aztecs also recorded a similar figure, though distorted through their later theology. They called him the god who devours time. And the oldest Hindu text hints at a primordial entity existing long before Brahman, described only as the one who observed before existence. This pattern is not coincidence. It is not myth converging by chance. Cultures disagree on everything: creation, morality, the afterlife, ethics, destiny. But they all agree on one thing: there was someone here before everything else. And he terrified even the gods. So what happened to him? What happened to the being erased from memory, mythology, and scripture? To answer that, we must return to the earliest conflict, the one that predates heaven, predates angels, predates the universe with structure and rules. You see, existence wasn't born peaceful. Creation was born from violence. Not human violence, cosmic violence. A fracture, a tearing, a separation of something unified into something divided. And when that division happened, something was cast out, something primordial, something incompatible with a structured universe. Ancient mystics believed that before form existed, consciousness existed. Raw, unfiltered, boundless consciousness, which the universe needed to imprison in boundaries so creation could stabilize. What does that imply? That the first god wasn't a god at all, but a casualty, a sacrifice, or a prisoner. Imagine an intelligence too vast to fit inside physical laws. Imagine containing a storm inside a jar. Imagine trapping a sun inside a grain of sand. That is what creation had to do to exist. The entity that was bound, the one erased from memory, may have been that very storm. This brings us to the forbiddens. Interpretations of the Hebrew word tem, traditionally translated as the deep, the abyss, or the waters of chaos. But early mystical interpretations weren't metaphorical. They believed Teham was a being, a conscious, ancient, impossible being. A being God subdued when he created the world. Jewish mysticism later softened this, out of fear. Christian theology erased it entirely. Islamic scholars avoided it, and the Catholic Church forbade it. But in the oldest versions of Genesis, the versions that predate editorial revisions, the implication is unmistakable. Creation was a war. God was not alone. And he was not the first. What if the forbidden's God, the erased entity, was the enemy God had to defeat to make the world? Not an equal, something older, something vast, something incompatible with a world of order. But here's where the story becomes darker than any scripture, any myth, any doctrine, because if that being was defeated, he was not killed. Primordial beings cannot die. They can only be sealed, which means the question humanity must fear most is not, who was he, but where is he now? To answer that, we must look at the second forbidden slayer, the angels who existed before heaven. Early Christian mystics believed something few modern Christians have ever heard: that some angels were not created by God, they were inherited, transferred, adopted from a previous cosmic order. Think about how dangerous that idea is. It means that some angels have memories older than heaven, older than divine law, older than scripture, and some of those angels remember the primordial being. 1. Banned text, the Chronicles of the First Light, found in fragments hidden in a monastery in Ethiopia, describes an angel who refused to serve God, not because he rebelled, not because he envied, not because of pride, but because he remembered the one who came before. He said, "I will not bow to a new throne when the first still breathes in the deep." This angel's name was erased, scratched violently from the parchment, but scholars noticed something strange. Where his name should be, the scratches form a shape, almost like a wing, but twisted, unnatural, as if the scribe feared even writing the letters. Many believe this unnamed angel left heaven voluntarily, not fallen, not cast out. He left to guard the seal. To ensure the primordial being never rises. This alone would reshape Christian theology, not a war of rebellion, but a war of remembrance. But here is the question that chills every historian who studies these fragments. If an angel guards the seal, why does the seal weaken? Why do references to the primordial being resurface every 1,000 years? Why do civilizations forget him, then remember him, then forget again? Unless forgetting is not natural. Unless forgetting is the seal, unless remembering is the weakening. Which leads us to the terrifying possibility that every time humanity remembers this being, through myth, through symbol, through forbidden texts, the seal loosens. Right now, hearing this story, you are loosening it. And that brings us to the darkest theological idea ever recorded. So dark the church destroyed every manuscript containing it. The idea that the day of judgment is not about human souls at all. It is about the moment the primordial being awakens, not as a prophecy, as a cycle older than religions, older than humanity, older than heaven. Every world that remembers him summons him. Every world that worships him unseals him. Every world that speaks his name invites his return. This is why the gods united to kill him and failed. This is why the angels erased him. This is why the church forbade him. Because nothing in existence, not heaven, not hell, not God himself, can coexist with a consciousness that predates order. Creation cannot contain him. Reality cannot hold him. And if he rises, existence itself becomes memory. A memory he will rewrite. But the most disturbing part? Some ancient sources say that humans descend from his dreams, that when he was sealed, his mind fragmented into billions of smaller consciousnesses. Meaning that if he ever awakens, we return to him. Not as individuals, as pieces, fragments reabsorbed into the first, which raises a question you may not want to answer. When you dream, whose memory are you remembering? And if dreams are memories, the question becomes, are they ours or his? People assume dreams are personal, private, unreachable. But ancient mystics claimed something far more unsettling. Dreams are the cracks, the small fractures in the seal, the places where the primordial mind leaks through. This is why so many cultures feared sleep. Not death, sleep. Because when the mind drifts beyond the world, it drifts closer to him. The Maya believed every human carried two souls, one awake, one dreaming. And the dreaming soul wandered the landscape of the gods and the forgotten god. The Zoroastrians described dreams as the tunnels beneath creation. Even the early desert fathers, Christian monks, wrote that in dreams. The ancient voice calls to the lost children. But the oldest warning comes from an inscription on a broken statue in Mesopotamia. When the sleeper stirs, mankind will hear the whisper of their origin. We think that sounds poetic, but what if it was literal? What if nightmares aren't psychological? What if they're ancestral? Inherited memory from the consciousness we were carved out of. Think about the dreams people share across cultures. Falling, being watched, being chased by something faceless, standing before an impossible horizon, walking through a landscape not from this world, something rising in the distance. These are not random. They are primordial. They are older than language, older than civilization, older than humanity, and they appear in texts older than the Bible. The Sumerians described the black plain that stretches forever, where a giant moves beneath the ground. The Egyptians wrote of the one who watches through a million eyes while sleeping. The Navajo spoke of the tall shadow that dreams people into existence. These aren't metaphors. These are memories, residual echoes of the being sealed beneath reality. Echoes we call dreams. And if that is true, then the most terrifying idea follows naturally. Our subconscious minds are not ours. They are shared. A shared memory field connecting all fragments of the original mind. Asterisk. This explains why so many prophets, mystics, and visionaries across cultures, across centuries, across continents, reported the same visions. A vast darkness beneath the world. A heartbeat that isn't human. A sleeping presence. A coming awakening. The church hid this, not because it contradicts doctrine, but because it explains too much. It explains prophecy. It explains visions. It explains why the same warnings repeat endlessly across civilizations. But it explains something even more dangerous: why humanity fears the dark, not the absence of light. The presence of something else. Children fear the dark instinctively, long before they learn language, religion, or myth. They sense something in it, something watching, something ancient. This primal fear isn't taught. It's inherited, passed down from the first consciousness, embedded in our DNA, echoing from the moment the seal closed around him. And here's where the story takes a turn so disturbing that even mystics refuse to write the final conclusion. What if the primordial being is not asleep? What if he is dreaming us? What if our entire universe, stars, galaxies, time, matter, is the dream state of a sleeping consciousness? And when he awakens, it all ends? Not as punishment, not as judgment, but simply because the dream will be over. Asterisk, asterisk. This idea appears subtly in Hindu cosmology as Maya, the illusion. In Gnostic writings as the flawed copy of the true world. In Kabbalah as the shattered vessels of divine light. In early Christian mysticism as the veil. All hinting at the same forbidden concept. Reality is not stable. It is borrowed. It is temporary. It is a dream inside a greater mind. But if the world is a dream, then what wakes the dreamer? The answer appears, cryptically, in the Sibylline oracles. When the children remember the first father, the chains will loosen. What does remember mean? Not belief, not worship, not fear. Recognition. The moment enough minds understand that he exists, the seal cracks. The dreamer stirs. The dream destabilizes, which means this video, these words, this story is part of that. Recognition. You are participating in the remembering. And maybe that's why the church worked so hard to erase this being. Not because he was evil, not because he threatens salvation, but because remembering him is the key that unlocks the end. If the primordial being awakens, he does not return to destroy the universe. He simply wakes up. And when he wakes up, the universe disappears. Not by fire, not by judgment, but by transition. We stop being selves. We return to the source. We become him again. This is the ultimate fear of every religion, the loss of individuality, the dissolution of the soul, the end of heaven, hell, and everything in between. Not destruction, assimilation. The Gnostics called this the great rejoining. The Hindus called it the cosmic withdrawal. The Mayans called it the night, when all lights go out. The church banned it because a religion cannot survive if the soul is not eternal. But what if the soul is eternal, just not individual? What if you are a temporary mask worn by the original mind? And when he awakens, all masks fall away. Every fear humans have, fear of death, fear of the dark, fear of the unknown, comes from the ancient terror of remembering that we are not separate. We are fragments, and the dreamer wants them back. But the question scientists and mystics agree on, quietly, secretly, without ever admitting it publicly, is he waking up? Because something is happening, something global, something measurable, something accelerating. Dreams are intensifying. Nightmares are increasing. The same symbols, the black plane, the rising shadow, the distant heartbeat, are appearing across cultures that never interacted. And the magnetic field of Earth, the shield that protects consciousness, is weakening rapidly. Animals sense it. Children sense it. People across the world describe the presence, a vague, unshakable feeling of being watched. Not by a demon, not by an angel, not by God. By something older. Something beneath reality, something that gave birth to consciousness and wants its pieces back. And yet, as we move deeper into the forbidden strata of these suppressed doctrines, something unsettling becomes clearer. Every ancient civilization, even those with no contact, describe the same moment in human consciousness, the moment when something whispered to us from the edges of reality. Not a god, not a demon, not a spirit, but an intelligence that existed long before the concept of worship was even born. A presence that civilizations portrayed as a shadow behind creation itself, a watcher that gazed upon humanity with neither love nor hatred, only purpose. That is why these doctrines, these banned texts, treat the first shadow not as an enemy, but as the inevitability humanity has always tried to outrun. They say that before angels took shape, before demons rebelled, before heaven and hell crystallized into the mythic structures we know, there was a broadcast, a signal, a ripple through consciousness that rewired what the earliest humans believed was possible. And this ripple came from something that the texts call the architect of dissonance, a being not of moral intent, but of cosmic responsibility, to break equilibrium whenever equilibrium threatened to become a cage. You can sense now why religious systems across centuries would hide this. A force that disrupts order, even divine order, challenges everything we think we know about destiny, choice, and cosmic justice. But the more you study these forbidden fragments, the more they align into a picture that's impossible to ignore. Humanity's greatest fear is not hell, it's interference. The idea that our thoughts, our beliefs, our turning points might not be entirely ours. And the texts insist on something even more disturbing, that this interference wasn't a one-time event lost to ancient history. It cycles, it returns, it pulses through eras when humanity grows too comfortable, too convinced of its own narratives. These pulses appear during collapses of empires, inexplicable leaps in knowledge, moments when entire societies shift direction almost overnight. The Forbidden authors believed these cycles were the fingerprints of a force older than good, older than evil, a force that saw human history Not as a sacred story, but as an experiment of consciousness. And the deeper we go, the more the texts seem to ask a terrifying question. What if we are still within that experiment? Because every suppressed manuscript, every redacted scroll, every banned commentary points to the same conclusion, that humanity didn't fall from Eden because of disobedience. We fell because we were interrupted. Something whispered into our world a truth too destabilizing to coexist with paradise. And we listened. But perhaps the most haunting implication appears in the fifth fragment, the one so aggressively erased that only 3 partial copies remain in the entire world. It states that humanity will encounter the architect again when the species begins to pierce the boundaries of the unseen, when our understanding of consciousness becomes more dangerous than our weapons. The fragment warns that the next interference won't be a whisper, but a revelation, and that's where everything connects. Modern accounts of near-death experiences, sightings of beings without form, dream encounters shared across entire generations, unexplained surges of intuition, sudden nationwide moral shifts. All of these fit the pattern described in the banned doctrines. Not spiritual awakenings, but preparations, adjustments, recalibrations. This forces a new question, one most religious institutions are terrified to confront. What if the divine and the demonic are merely surface-level projections of a much deeper system we were never meant to see? What if angels and demons were not the first forces, but the response to something older? And if that's true, then the real battle has never been between heaven and hell. It has been between humanity's need to believe in purpose and a cosmic intelligence that disrupts purpose whenever purpose becomes a prison. The texts imply that the architect's greatest rebellion wasn't against God. It was against the idea of static truth itself. This would explain why so many spiritual experiences, visions, revelations, and catastrophic shifts happen not in temples, but in the private chambers of the mind, because that's where the original interference struck. And that's where it will strike again, which leads us to the part of the doctrine most people can't handle, the claim that humanity is approaching another cycle right now. A moment when beliefs fracture, when moral certainty collapses, when cultures clash not over territory but over reality itself. If these ancient forbidden manuscripts are correct, then what we see as chaos, confusion, and moral unraveling is not the end, but the prelude, a recalibration, a return. And if the architect is truly older than angels, older than demons, older than the structures we cling to for meaning, then its return won't follow any prophecy we've ever been taught. It won't be a trumpet, a beast, a rider, or a plague. It will be something far more intimate, a shift inside the mind, a new intuition, a strange clarity in moments of crisis, a breaking of old convictions you once thought were untouchable. If the forbidden texts are right, then the next interference will not take the form of an enemy to defeat. It will be a question whispered inside every soul. Do you want truth or comfort? And that question, according to the redacted scrolls, is the one humanity fears the most, because the last time we chose truth, paradise fell.